There's something most men never expect. Not from her. Not from the woman who said she loved him. Not from the woman he gave loyalty, stability, and emotional safety. Yet it still happens. Women cheat on good men, and most men have no idea why. Because the reasons are almost never what you think. It's rarely about looks, rarely about money, rarely even about the other guy. Tonight, I'm breaking down the 4 psychological triggers that push some women to cheat, even when they're with a genuinely good man. And once you understand these, you'll never see female behavior the same way again. Let's begin. Reason 1. She feels emotionally unseen. The invisible woman effect. When a woman cheats on a good man, the world often labels her ungrateful, selfish, or lacking loyalty. But underneath that behavior lies a psychological reality most men never even consider. Women rarely cheat because they want a different partner. They cheat because they want to feel like a different version of themselves. A good man may provide consistency, protection, and loyalty, but if she stops feeling emotionally seen, the internal disconnection begins long before the betrayal ever happens. This is what psychologists call the invisible woman effect, and it is far more powerful than most men realize. A woman can live in the same house, share the same bed, and go through daily routines with a man who loves her, yet still feel like she has slowly faded out of emotional focus. Not because he is bad, lazy, or cruel, but because emotional presence and emotional connection are not the same thing. A man can be present physically while absent emotionally. He can listen to her words while missing her meaning. He can support her tasks while missing her feelings. And to a woman, emotional invisibility feels like a tiny erosion of her identity. She stops feeling special, stops feeling chosen, stops feeling understood, and eventually stops feeling important. Most men don't realize that emotional invisibility for a woman is not about arguments, conflict, or dramatic moments. It's about the slow disappearance of emotional attunement. She begins to think, does he still notice me? Does he still see my efforts? Does he still respond to my emotions? Does he hear what I'm not saying? When a woman feels unheard or overlooked long enough, her emotional brain interprets it as rejection. And rejection, even unintentional, creates a psychological vacuum inside her. Into that vacuum steps anyone who can momentarily make her feel emotionally illuminated again. It doesn't have to be a lover. It can be a coworker who asks about her day with genuine curiosity, a friend who listens without distraction, a stranger who compliments something her partner hasn't noticed in years. Emotional attention is the spark. Emotional meaning is the oxygen. And in the absence of emotional recognition at home, even a small spark can feel like fire. This is where cheating becomes psychologically possible. Not because she planned it, not because she wanted someone new, but because she wanted to feel felt. Women aren't driven by sexual novelty the way men are. They're driven by emotional resonance. A woman cheats not for the man, but for the emotional reflection she feels in his presence, a reflection she no longer feels with her partner. She may still love her man, she may still appreciate him, she may still desire the relationship, but emotional invisibility distorts her sense of self, making her vulnerable to any experience that makes her feel seen again. In these moments, she isn't thinking about the consequences. She's reacting to a psychological hunger. A hunger for acknowledgement, attention, validation, and emotional intimacy. And once she experiences even a small taste of what she's been missing, her brain releases a dopamine surge that feels like relief, like finally breathing after being underwater. That relief becomes addictive. It gives her identity a pulse again. It makes her feel like a woman again, not just a partner fulfilling routines. It makes her feel alive in ways she hasn't felt in years. The tragic part is that she often doesn't want the other man. She wants the feeling he activated within her. And the even deeper tragedy is this. Most good men never realize they stopped seeing her. They never realize their emotional presence weakened. They never realize connection turned into comfort, comfort turned into complacency, and complacency turned into emotional blindness. To her, cheating becomes not a search for sex, but a search for significance. Not an escape from her partner, but an escape from emotional numbness. Not a desire to betray, but a desire to feel like she still matters on a deep emotional level. Women cheat when they no longer recognize themselves in the relationship, when the version of them that once felt alive, feminine, valued, and emotionally connected has disappeared. And the moment someone else reflects that lost version back to them, even briefly, their loyalty becomes psychologically vulnerable. This is the invisible woman effect, and unless a man understands it, he will blame himself for a problem he never knew existed. Reason 2. Her needs shift, but she doesn't communicate. Identity transition. One of the most misunderstood psychological reasons women cheat on good men is the silent, invisible shift that happens inside her as she evolves through different stages of life. A woman's emotional needs don't stay the same over the years. They grow, change, fluctuate, and expand as she moves into new phases of identity. But while her inner world changes, many women struggle to communicate these shifts to their partner, especially when that partner is loving, stable, and good-hearted. Ironically, good men often get cheated on because they are stable, predictable, and reliable, not because they are lacking in character or care. When a woman enters a new chapter in life, whether due to career advancements, emotional growth, new friendships, shifting responsibilities, or personal revelations, she begins to feel different internally. Her emotional desires alter. The type of connection she craves transforms. The things that once fulfilled her may now feel flat or outdated, but instead of openly expressing these new needs, which could potentially disappoint her partner, hurt his feelings, or create conflict, she remains silent, hoping things will fix themselves. This silence becomes the starting point of emotional detachment. She doesn't want to seem ungrateful. She doesn't want to burden him with her inner confusion. She doesn't want to make it a big deal or risk destabilizing the relationship. So she convinces herself that her shifting needs are temporary, that they'll fade, that she just needs time. But they don't fade. They grow louder, stronger, and more emotionally urgent. And because she's not communicating them, her partner remains lovingly unaware. The relationship continues operating on old emotional software, while she internally updates to a new version of herself. This mismatch creates what psychologists call an identity transition gap, a space where she feels disconnected, not because something is wrong between them, but because something is transforming within her. In this gap, she starts feeling misunderstood, even when he's not doing anything wrong. She feels emotionally distant, even when he's physically present. She feels restless, even when life is stable. Stability begins to feel like stagnation. Predictability begins to feel like emotional stillness. And eventually, she begins questioning whether the relationship still reflects who she is becoming. In this vulnerable psychological state, if someone enters her life who resonates with a new version of her, her evolving identity, her shifting feelings, her emerging desires, she experiences an emotional alignment she hasn't felt in months or years. This alignment is powerful because it confirms something she's been sensing silently. I've changed. The other person becomes a mirror, showing her the version of herself she is growing into, while her partner still sees the version she used to be. This creates a dangerous emotional contrast, not because the new person is better, not because her partner is failing, but because one reflects her current emotional identity while the other reflects her past one. Cheating in this stage is rarely intentional. It is not pre-planned, not sought after, not something she believes she would ever do. It happens because she feels synchronized with someone emotionally at a time when she feels unsynchronized at home. And because she has not communicated her inner transition, the relationship cannot adapt to her new needs, leaving her feeling simultaneously guilty and justified. She might tell herself, "I don't want a different man. I just want to feel understood again." But because she avoids expressing what she needs, she subconsciously seeks it elsewhere. The tragedy is that men caught in this situation blame themselves, without realizing her cheating had nothing to do with something they did wrong. It had everything to do with unspoken emotional evolution inside her. Women cheat during identity transitions because they do not know how to articulate the uncomfortable truth. I'm changing, and I don't know how to bring you into this new version of me. They don't communicate because they fear conflict, disappointing a good man, or destabilizing the peace. So they adapt silently to keep harmony alive, and in the process, disconnect silently as their inner world outgrows the relationship. Cheating becomes not an act of betrayal against him, but an act of alignment with a new emotional reality she didn't know how to share. The other man is not the cause. He is the trigger that exposes the emotional distance she's been hiding. The core issue is not the relationship. It's the communication that never happened. And until a man understands this psychological pattern, he will misinterpret her cheating as a reflection of his inadequacy rather than a reflection of her silent transformation. Reason 3. She lacks internal boundaries, external validation addiction. One of the most painful truths for good men to accept is that sometimes a woman cheats not because the relationship is broken, not because the man is inattentive, and not because the love isn't real, but because she has never developed the internal emotional boundaries and self-worth needed to protect the relationship from outside validation. This reason is deeply psychological, rooted not in desire but in insecurity, and it's often the scenario that blindsides men the hardest. A woman who lacks internal boundaries is highly susceptible to what psychologists call validation addiction, a psychological loop where her sense of worth depends on external attention, admiration, and emotional stimulation. Even if she is with a good man, someone loyal, consistent, loving, supportive, it never feels like enough. Not because he isn't enough, but because the validation she craves is bottomless. She is chasing a feeling, not a person. She's chasing reassurance, not romance. She's chasing a temporary emotional high because she has never learned how to hold stable emotional value within herself. A woman like this doesn't cheat because she wants another man. She cheats because she wants another hit of the emotional dopamine that external attention gives her. Validation becomes a drug. Compliments become a form of emotional oxygen. Flirting becomes a temporary escape from her self-doubt. And attention, especially from someone new, becomes a powerful mirror reflecting back a version of herself that she wants to believe is still true. Desirable, attractive, wanted, special. The paradox is tragic. She may have a partner at home who genuinely loves her, who invests in her, who chooses her every day. Yet emotionally, she feels unseen unless multiple people are confirming her value at the same time. She believes the relationship is supposed to fill her insecurity hole. Yet insecurity holes are bottomless pits. Even the best partner in the world cannot fill them. This lack of internal boundaries shows up in small ways long before cheating ever happens. She seeks attention online, posts for validation, responds to messages she shouldn't, entertains attention from male friends, and forms emotional connections that slowly cross lines. She tells herself it's harmless. She convinces herself there's nothing wrong with enjoying admiration. She reassures herself that she'll never cross the line. But the line doesn't disappear in one moment. It fades gradually. Every compliment becomes a mini dopamine hit. Every flirty message becomes a boost of self-esteem. Every moment of attention becomes proof that she still has power, desirability, and feminine energy. And because her self-worth depends on these external signals, she becomes increasingly dependent on them. The good man at home is not the problem. In fact, the better the man is, the more unworthy she may secretly feel. His love can make her insecurity louder, not quieter, because deep down she believes she doesn't deserve him. She doesn't cheat because he's not enough. She cheats because she never feels like she is enough. This insecurity becomes a silent emotional flaw no relationship can fix for her. And when a new man enters the picture, someone who gives her attention, compliments her, laughs at her jokes, praises parts of her that her partner naturally stopped mentioning after years together, the emotional high feels intoxicating. It feels like emotional proof. I'm valuable. I'm wanted. I still have it. The more insecure she is internally, the more she becomes addicted to this feeling. And like any addiction, she needs more and more of it to feel the same emotional hit. That's when boundaries start to blur, not because she wants to cheat, but because she doesn't know how to shut the door on emotional temptation. She doesn't know how to say no to validation because it feels like rejecting confirmation of her worth. She ends up in situations she thinks she can control emotionally, but her insecurity-driven mind keeps pushing her toward the thrill of being desired. Good men often never see this coming because they assume loyalty is based on love. But for insecure women, loyalty is often overridden by insecurity. She may still love him deeply, but her lack of inner emotional structure makes her vulnerable to situations where stronger women would walk away instantly. To her, cheating becomes the ultimate validation hit, even if it lasts only a moment. The other man doesn't matter. The relationship with him doesn't matter. The future doesn't matter. What matters is the instant emotional confirmation that she is wanted. Afterward, she may feel guilt, shame, confusion, or regret, but the damage is already done. The core truth is this: a woman with weak internal boundaries and unresolved insecurity cannot protect a good man, no matter how much she loves him. She cheats not because he is lacking, but because she is lacking the emotional resilience to manage external attention and internal emptiness. And until she learns self-worth from within, no partner, no matter how loyal or loving, can fill the void she keeps trying to soothe with validation from the outside world. Reason 4. She tests her power. Subconscious control mechanism. One of the most rarely discussed but psychologically potent reasons some women cheat on good men is the subconscious need to reclaim a sense of personal power, especially when life or the relationship makes her feel emotionally boxed in, overly controlled, or overshadowed by a partner who seems unshakable in his goodness. This is not about revenge, nor is it about seeking a better man. It is about an internal struggle with autonomy, identity, and emotional sovereignty. When a woman feels that her choices, desires, or imperfections are being overshadowed by a partner who is consistently moral, stable, reliable, and predictable, she may begin to feel an uncomfortable pressure, not created by his actions, but by the emotional dynamic of the relationship itself. Good men often don't realize that sometimes their very goodness becomes a pedestal she feels suffocated by. She begins to feel like there is no room for her flaws, no space for her emotional complexity, and no permission to be imperfect within the relationship. She may start perceiving, consciously or unconsciously, that he holds the moral high ground, that he is the better person, and that she is constantly catching up. This can create a psychological imbalance where she feels emotionally trapped, almost as if she must always be the gentle, agreeable, grateful, well-behaved version of herself. Over time, this dynamic becomes a quiet internal prison that she rarely expresses out loud. Instead, she holds it in, trying not to disrupt the harmony or disappoint a man who has done nothing wrong. But emotional pressure does not disappear by staying silent. It transforms. It turns into a subconscious longing to feel autonomous again, to feel like her choices still matter, like she still has control over her own life, like she is not just living within a script shaped by a perfectly stable partner. This is where the psychological need for power comes in. Not power over the man, but power over her own inner world. The psychological mechanism here is subtle but extremely powerful. Cheating becomes a form of rebellion, not against the man, but against the pressure of perfection. It becomes a subconscious assertion of independence, a way to feel like she can still make decisions that are entirely her own, even if those decisions are destructive. Some women cheat not because they lack loyalty, but because they lack emotional space to be fully human. Flaws, fears, impulses, mistakes, and all. A good man who is overly stable, overly predictable, or overly accommodating can accidentally create a dynamic where she feels like she cannot express darker emotions, conflicting desires, or deeper uncertainties without disrupting the peace. The problem is not his goodness. The problem is the emotional pedestal that makes her feel like she must be the same version of herself forever. When a woman feels trapped in a role, the supportive partner, the loyal girlfriend, the calm wife, the emotionally stable counterpart. She may begin craving a moment where she is uncontained, unrestricted, and unjudged. Cheating becomes that moment, not because she wants the other man, but because she wants to feel like her choices haven't been assimilated into stability itself. She may feel like her life has become predictable, that her emotional world has flattened, that her spontaneity has been replaced by structure, and that all her flaws have been softened out of existence in order to maintain harmony with him. That emotional stagnation breeds rebellion. The other man becomes a symbol, not a partner. A symbol of permission to be wild, impulsive, unfiltered, or even reckless. She may not consciously think this way, but her subconscious interprets the act of cheating as a reclaiming of lost autonomy. I make my own decisions. I can still disrupt my own life. I'm not trapped in perfection. I still have power over my story. This sense of reclaimed power feels intoxicating, even if only briefly, because it temporarily relieves the psychological tension of being the good woman next to a good man. Women who cheat for this reason often say afterward, "I don't even know why I did it." Because the motive was never logical. It was emotional, primal, subconscious. She wasn't drawn to the other man. She was drawn to the feeling of personal agency the situation created. To a woman who feels emotionally boxed in, even the smallest act of rebellion becomes a lifeline to a part of herself she has suppressed. The most painful irony is that the better the man is, the more deeply she may feel this psychological imbalance, because his goodness creates a dynamic where she feels like she cannot express complexity, darkness, anger, uncertainty, or selfishness without disappointing him or disrupting the image of their perfect relationship. And instead of communicating this pressure, which she fears would hurt him or seem irrational, she tries to maintain the harmony until the emotional weight becomes too heavy. Cheating becomes the emotional release valve. It is a flawed, harmful, and destructive one, but to her, in that moment, it feels like the only one. What's crucial to understand is that this reason has nothing to do with the good man's value or masculinity. It has everything to do with her internal relationship to freedom, identity, and emotional expression. A woman who cheats to reclaim power is not seeking love, passion, or connection. She is seeking psychological liberation from a role she no longer feels in control of. And once you understand this, you realize cheating is never about the other guy. It's about the version of herself she is trying to free. At the end of the day, the truth is simple but painful. Women don't just cheat because something is wrong with him. They cheat because something is unresolved within them. Emotional invisibility, unspoken identity shifts, insecure validation loops, and subconscious power struggles. These aren't reflections of a man's worth. These are reflections of a woman's internal world, shaped long before the relationship even began. And this is why good men suffer the deepest wounds, because they give the most, they love the hardest, and they assume loyalty is earned by kindness. But kindness doesn't cure emotional confusion. Goodness doesn't fix insecurity. Stability doesn't erase someone's need for control or validation. So if you're a man who has been hurt like this, breathe. What happened to you is not a sign that you weren't enough. It's not proof that you lacked value, masculinity, or strength. It's simply evidence that you loved someone who didn't know how to love from a stable place within themselves. But here's the part most men never realize. Betrayal doesn't define you. It refines you. It sharpens your awareness. It strengthens your boundaries. And it teaches you the difference between a woman who chooses you out of love and a woman who chooses you out of convenience. The right woman will not make you question your worth. She will not require you to compete with her insecurities, her impulses, or her emotional chaos. The right woman will protect the relationship with the same intensity you use to build it. So heal, grow, rise. Because when a good man becomes a wise man, he becomes unstoppable. And the next chapter of your life will not be defined by who hurt you, but by who you become after the lesson.